Hello, everyone. Want to welcome you to today's session on publishing identity server logs to the Elk stack. My name is Andrew Donnells. I'm a lead solutions engineer at WSO2, and just want to walk you through the kind of simple steps it takes to have your application logs be more accessible and more usable in a cloud environment. And we're just going to use the Elk stack as kind of the example to demonstrate the benefits of that. So the first thing we're going to get into doing is using this docker-elk repo. So this is a public repo put out by fans of the Elk stack. So this isn't something that WSO2 maintains or supports. And the key point here is we're going to spin up the whole Elk stack, and we're going to spin up this log spout container. And so we're going to go ahead and get that up and running. And let that start, and I'll describe what's going on here. So again, we're spinning up the Docker Compose for the Elk stack. So that's going to spin up Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. And then on top of that, we're also spinning up another container that's going to be listening to the Docker instance and listening for any console output on top of the Docker running instance. So what that's going to allow us to do then is redirect that output wherever we want. In this case, we're redirecting it to port 5000 towards the Logstash running instance. So we can see we have, this is the Docker Compose, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana on an Elk network. And then here's this log spout container. And this is the important part to understand what's going on right here, right? Because the Elk stack is just a generic log management and dashboarding platform. And so here, this log spout container, what its job is to listen to Docker and publish any message events that Docker hears about to this Logstash running instance at port 5000. And we've told Logstash in Logstash's config, actually here, that you should expect to see JSON messages coming in on port 5000. So now we need to make sure that Identity Server is actually producing those JSON messages. So additionally, we're going to go ahead and start up the Identity Server stack. So this is going to start up a SQL database and then the Identity Server. Not super important. It's pretty straightforward Docker Compose. The important thing is we are inputting our own log4j appender properties. So I have this log4j.properties file is inside of the Identity Server install, and it has a number of different appenders where it's pushing all these logs to different files. We don't want that. We don't want to push logs to files. Those log files, have to then grow and take up disk space, and that's not how we want to work in the cloud. So we are only appending logs to the console, and we're taking this console appender, and we're going to tell it to do it a little differently. We're going to use the log4j JSON layout structure that's built into log4j. If this was a completely different application, the only thing important here is that each and every log message is a standalone JSON object. So each message can be parsed as JSON so that any consuming log aggregation platforms can then ingest that message and do some basic understanding and filtering of it. Here we can also say we're also doing our trace level logging, so we get everything, right? Now that we're not writing these things to a file on disk and we're not worrying about it growing too big or having to sort through it later, we can just say, hey, give me everything, dump it all out to console. It's all going to be a JSON message. And here's a quick little, this is the Docker Compose of Identity Server that's running. So now that we can see Identity Server is getting started, I'm going to go ahead and we'll try to pull up the Elasticsearch. So Elastic has built-in username and password for admin. So we're just going to use that. And it's a brand new install. And so we have already set up the index. So there's instructions when you first install Elasticsearch. You have to tell it an index, and it's gonna you're just gonna say it's basically the information coming in through Logstash. So in this case, our index is just everything coming in from Logstash. Again, if you have a very complicated Elasticsearch setup, you can fragment your data however you want, but for this example, that's not important. We just want to see that we're getting information into our Elasticsearch system from our identity server. And so these are the audit logs. So I've specifically filtered out, and we can see how these logs have been parsed out with that JSON. So if we keep going down, we can see we have the log level, class information for that logger, the logger name, the individual message that got parsed out there, and source classes, line number for this log, right? So this gives us source method. This gives us the ability to pretty intricately fragment out each of these log messages based on their purpose, and then we can then derive all of our business logic from that purpose. And then, should we want to parse a message even farther? So in this case, the audit log message is somewhat structured like a data model. There are a number of different mechanisms inside of Logstash or in other log aggregation platforms to parse out string text to try to pull out information. So if you wanted to pull out these identifying numbers or things like that, right? You can regex those out, or you can try to parse this into an object format and then pull out those objects, things like that. That's, again, kind of per your use case, but that can then further give you more information to filter down what's going on. So I think WSO2 should be started by now. And it is. So we're going to log in as admin. And we're going to see that we have a couple users here, just dummy users. So we have admin user and a couple basic users. But first, I want to show we have, in fact, produced a new event. And so that was our first event, but now we can see that the admin at CarbonSuper has logged in. So we get, again, the Docker name that it's coming in on. So we can filter by individual, running containers or pods or wherever you have this deployed. We have, again, the message of the actual audit log, the method that was logged from Identity Server, and just we can see that history of all the different events that was produced outside of Identity Server for that just one admin login step. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of, again, show the more audit logging of different user activities. So I'm going to come to this My Account page in this new profile, just so we're not getting our authorizations crossed, and log in as Bob. And we see Bob's profile, the user information. And so if we go back to our Elasticsearch, we again see this event. So now we see Bob being logged in. So, I mean, obviously in a production environment, there'll be tons and tons of these log messages and log events coming in. That then serves as your kind of event timeline of things happening, because the Identity Server application is logging these audit logs when they happen. And so you can track these audit log messages kind of as the event message for the system, right? And because we can parse out, who it is, the claims that they're capturing, what they were trying to do, we can start kind of building the business use cases to determine how many people are logging in, when are they logging in, things of that nature. What kind of claims they're accessing, whatever information is in those audit logs, we can start building out those use cases. The important part of this is getting back to this console appender with this JSON layout inside of Identity Server, yes, we can see all this in Elasticsearch and, in the Elk stack. And the Elk stack has many more, visualizations, whether it's dashboards or maps, and all the data coming in there. You can start piecing out if IP addresses are being logged, whatever's being logged from the user in Identity Server can then be parsed out into these graphs and these different visuals. But the big key for all of our users and admins of Identity Server is once you export the logs and log messages to the console in JSON, if you're deployed on AWS inside of an EC2 instance, right? The EC2 instance is listening to standard out, and it will also get these JSON messages, right? So this JSON message would end up in the AWS log events management system, and it can start then making decisions on it because it can parse JSON and it can tell you numbers, or you can set up alerts or things like that, right? So the big important thing is no matter where you are in the cloud or on your own infrastructure, listening to that standard out from the application and behaving or parsing the log informations from there is much more versatile and gives you the ability. You don't have to add file listeners, and you don't have to worry about those files growing in size on disk and what's going to happen with that. And if the disk fills up, it just gives you a little more flexibility to react to more information. From there, I just want to go ahead and talk through the next event. So that was the end of the demonstration. I do have the chat opened up. So if anyone's watching live and wants to publish some chat messages, you can feel free to do that. And I'm sure if you're not watching it live and comment, we can reply to those comments. But also we have a Slack community. So if you want to discuss more with some Identity Server developers or other developers working with Identity Server, you can join the Slack community and ask those questions there. We have a couple other upcoming events that you may want to join. So September 30th, we're going to do a deploying and customizing the My Accounts app, which you saw me log in with Bob. That's going to be as an Identity Server community call. And then the next Identity in 15, which is what this is going to be all about user provisioning, and that'll be on October 5th. And then the best resource to go to for just learning about how Identity Server is set up and what functionality is there and what it can do is going to our website and also looking through the documentation. So I think I'll give it a few more minutes. And Christopher, thanks for commenting. It was a good session. Nothing broke, nothing got messed up. So that was always good. We'll wait just a few more minutes until the 15 minutes is up. If there's any other questions coming in. Doesn't look like there is, so I guess we'll just end this session on time for a total of 15 minutes. And thanks for joining.